guys, this is Amadea and today we're gonna do a hair shading tutorial. Yay! We're gonna attempt to make a cartoon stylized hair that kind of has these highlights and shadows going, and I'm gonna tell you all my tricks and tips and tricks on how I shade hair, and I hope that it will give you some good insights and that you will be able to apply it to your own process after watching. And if you like my videos, please make sure to hit subscribe and tap the little bell for notifications. And also there's some exciting news before we get started that in a couple days, so after this video is out the next day, we're gonna open a giveaway with my friend Nina Milke. Make sure to check out her channel. Her art is amazing and she is such a special person in my life. So we're excited that we are gonna have a giveaway with stickers, art prints and brush packs. It's gonna come out in 2 days on our Instagram page and it's gonna be open for about a week or two. So yeah, make sure to head there. Alright, hair shading tutorial, here it goes! First I'm just gonna show you guys everything that I prepped for this tutorial so far. So here was my sketch, and then on that the line art, and then I just already applied the flat colors and the shadows for all the other areas besides the hair. And so that's what I'm just showing you right now by turning them on individually, so you kind of have an idea of how I got this far with my piece if you would like to recreate the whole process. And I just switched the layer mode to screen on the shoulder piece so it's lighter. I'm showing you the abstract background right now. I'm trying out some different layer modes, but I decided on normal in the end. And here I'm just wanting to let you guys see the sketch that inspired this piece and also the draw this in your style. That sketch was based on my favorites, Lila Lopez's drawing, and you can see it on my Instagram. Alright, so first we're gonna grab a basic brush, and that is the detail brush that I'm using, and I just turned up the maximum size in the properties to bigger, and that's how it got so fat, so it's a little easier to apply the shadows as opposed to just using a tinier brush that I use for lines. And that was my trick. So if you have any kind of brush that has thinner edges, then you can use that and just make it bigger like that in the properties. I just added the light source because we're gonna do these shadows here as if the light source is coming from the top left corner, and you will see that that's gonna guide where I put these shadows everywhere. So I just created a clipping mask on the base layer, and I named it base shadows because first I am just going to outline all the areas that would be the darkest, which in this case is usually behind the neck. So I am trying to create some depth here for the back of the hair as opposed to the front of the hair, and that's why I am trying to make it seem like those curls are coming out. And so I left them lighter and I made the back darker, and you can apply this technique to your liner too. And when you color hair, just try to create depth with adding darker areas underneath the curls that you want to stand out. And also the other thing that I'm adding right now is just, if these curls will be standing out, then also outlining the side of it from the opposite side of the light source will create the effect of it standing out just the same way. And so I'm basically going over the right side of each of the lines that I drew that would be in a darker area. I'm adding this darker tone, which I, by the way, color picked from the base color. So I just picked the base color and then pick it a little darker. And my friend told me that to make sure that your shadows are contrasting enough, it's better to pick a little bit darker than what you originally think that you should pick, because normally this happens to me a lot. In the end, I would just spend hours and hours on shading, and in the very end it looks like it's flat a little bit, and I think that I just need to get a little bit bolder with choosing darker colors for the shadows, and that will help with this aspect of my art, and maybe that's a tip that you can use as well. So I am continuing with the same process. I'm basically just trying to think through which hair will be behind her back and which hair will have a piece of strand that will come forward from the rest, and just keeping the light source also in mind on the top left corner. So I think mainly we're almost done with this base shadow color. And also a tip here, it is better to just use the brush on full opacity, so the darkest possible, because after you're done you can freely make the layer a little less opacity. So if you see on the left, the bottom little slider is full on the top, so that means it's the richest version of this color possible. It's not see-through at all. And then what I'm gonna do is, after I'm done with this layer, I'm gonna play around a little bit and see if I should make it a little more see-through, or even just adjusting the colors. You will see that in the end I always like to play around with the colors. Okay, so next layer. For this one, I am gonna almost do the same thing, but this is called the soft shadows layer, and adding the clipping mask, of course. And I'm just adding bigger shadows that are have a little softer edges to the opposite side from where the light source is coming from. And I think that this just looks very pretty as far as making it seem like the hair has some more variety of color, and it's not so many harsh shadows, but it's more natural. It has some soft edges to the color variations to it. And basically right now I'm just adding these to the right side of her body and her hair. Not her body, like her hair on her right side of her body. And then also using the selector tool, because it's a lot easier to add these soft shadows to the exact edge that you want if you select a certain area and just apply it to that. So you can see how all the other strands that I didn't pick kind of stand out in the front, as opposed to being in the shadow, like the area that I just made darker. And so you can see how I'm just applying these soft shadows in the bottom of each hair strand, because the light is coming from above. And this is actually most of the time when I shade hair, unless it's coming from below, then the only thing that would be different is that the areas that are dark right now would be light, and so it just flip-flops if you think about it, because if the light was coming from below, then the bottom of the hair would be lighter and the top would be darker. So it's the exact same thing as I add these shadows right now, just the opposite color. And even behind the neck, if the light is coming from directly below her chin, then that area would be lighter as well. But right now the light is above, so I'm just adding the shadows to the opposite side. So right now I also just picked a little bit of a darker shade than what I was initially using for these shadows, and make the areas that are dark even darker. So you will see right below her, like right by her hands and below her neck, I'm just gonna add even darker purple so that her face is really contrasted and pops out, which I think is a really nice way to draw the viewer's attention to the areas with contrast. That's one of the ways. And so we are done with the shadows, so I'm gonna add a new clipping mask and name it Soft Shadow. Yeah, the other I've named Soft Shadows, and this one I'm gonna name Lighter Shadows, Lighter Shades, jeez. So I'm gonna pick a little bit of a lighter pink, and this pink doesn't really work with my palette, so I decided to look at the original Draw This in Your Style and just color pick some of the lighter tones. But just having these next to each other, I actually realized that the colors are really off from the original, and I really love how the original looks as far as the color scheme goes. So I went to the settings, to the magic wand, and I'm playing around with the colors settings there, and I'm also trying out different layer opacities and different layer modes. And so that is what you see me doing here right now. And for your hairs, it probably is a good idea to try these things out as well, because what I a lot of time notice, even when I do original art, that the initial idea of how the hair should look like after I paint it, if I actually change up these modes, then it ends up looking a lot cooler because there's so many possibilities with digital art for switching up the colors, and definitely try to benefit from that as much as possible. And then finally, I decided on the tones for the shadows that I think look the best, and I'm just adding the highlights, which will be on the opposite side of the strands than where we added the colors, so you can see where the light source is and how these light pink lines are closer to the sun. And also, if your pencil has pressure sensitivity, you can see how I am not pushing so hard right now. I'm just trying to create strokes that are a little lighter for creating movement in the hair, which is also something that you can think about when making hair, is how you can draw lines and use the colors to point to the subject and where you want to bring the viewer's attention. So right now I want that to be the face. So all of these light brush stroke, I'm trying to direct them towards the main point of view, main focal point of this piece, which is her face. And also just making these light areas to the one side where I think that the light would hit it if there was actually light in a real setting scenario, how it is on this painting right now. And for these strokes, it's really important to have a loose hand, so make sure to do a warm-up beforehand if you want to. And also what really helps me is thinking about these strands as something random, because, you know, hair randomly creates different forms and shapes as strands. So when I try to do the lighter strokes inside of each strand, and I try to think of direction for these lines that are not symmetrical or not the same. And I actually didn't like that right there, because it more reminded me of a braid pattern than just nice curly flowy hair. So that's what I'm adding here right now. And this is also a really good way to be able to know where to put these lines, is to pick a reference that has a similar hairstyle that you would like to draw, and then it's really helpful to just observe the lines and how they are structured. And that's exactly why I am usually doing my sketch studies for my favorite artist, because the way she draws hair is just so beautiful and effortless, and I love that the way her hair strands flow is very randomized. Here for the next minute or so, I'm just gonna use the time lapse that was recorded by Procreate, because my GoPro randomly cut out, but you can still perfectly see what I'm doing. So I'm right now just finishing up the highlights everywhere, and then doing a little test to make sure the colors look right. And then after that, I'm adding the highlights in the opposite direction, so in a horizontal way. And actually the way I'm adding these highlights is with the selection tool. So I select each strand individually, and that's how I can perfectly add these vertical lines. And then also for the white lines, similarly, like we talked already, I'm adding the direction of these white hair strands so that they point towards her face. And then right here, the last thing that we have left for the hair is to add little shadows under the flowers and add the extra hair strands. So first I'm gonna start with adding these random hair strands, just kind of creating a more natural look. And this is for me one of the most fun parts, because it's such a little thing that you add, but there is actually an art form to it on how to add these hair strands effectively. And I feel like every time just doing it, I'm getting a little and little better each time. It's almost like highlights. You just have to know which brush stroke will look the the best way possible, and just making it natural and making it look very effortless, and having a loose hand is all key. So you can see right now I'm struggling a little bit. I'm redrawing the hair strand like 5 times because it's just too thick, or it's too thin, or it flows weird. But in the end, what matters is that you kind of try to connect the hair strands that get separated to the front or to the side of the hair. You kind of connect those back to the main part of the hair. So that's actually, you can see how I'm doing that right now, is connecting back the hair strands to the big mass of the base form. And so, because if you think about how your hair works too, when there is a little strand that falls out, it's still not gonna perfectly be a separate strand. There is gonna be a couple little pieces here and there that will connect back to the bigger mass of hair. And I hope the way I explained that makes sense. But this is how I do that. And for the colors, I just color pick right now. I am picking the colors that are on the side of that hair. So on the left side, it's mostly gonna be lighter tones, and then on the right side, it's gonna be darker ones, just to make sure that the hair strands that are randomized and standing out are matching the base area of the hair where I'm putting them down. And so the last and one of the most important tip that I have for you for the hair tutorial is to make sure that when you draw these hair strands, that they have a beginning point and an ending point, so they just never float around by themselves. Because if you think of your own hair too, it starts on your scalp, and then the length of your hair will always be a straight line. So you can see that too when I'm doing these loose hairs, they are always starting from behind something and then end with being covered with another hairpiece. So this piece will be posted on my Instagram tonight, so make sure to check it out there if you want to see the final tweaks that I did after the hair being done. Thanks for watching. That was awesome. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and make sure to subscribe and like this video if you did, and let me know in the comments what other body part should I make a tutorial on. I'm thinking nose, eyebrows, maybe hands, feet, or just generally shading the body, and I will make sure to answer you and include that in my next video. So I really appreciate you being here and hope that you have an amazing day. Bye.